Meet Emmy. She's autistic, but she doesn't know it yet. She grew up experiencing the world differently from her peers. She didn't understand her peers. She struggled with change and had very specific interests. She didn't understand why she was the way that she was, but one day she would get an answer. Autism as a neurological and developmental disorder only became recognized in 1980. And according to a CDC study done in April of 2023, men are diagnosed at a 4-to-1 rate in comparison to women. And according to the New York Times in April of 2023, autism rates in young girls have steadily risen in recent years. But as more women are being diagnosed into adulthood, many wonder how many girls are still being missed. This blatant oversight forces us to look at the causes and effects to this diagnosing problem of women with autism at lower rates and older ages than their male counterparts. Because no young girl, like Emmy, should have to grow up not knowing why she was different. Emmy and her parents always knew that she was different growing up. And experiences like hers stem from two main causes: the lack of research and differences in presenting. First, the lack of research. According to Satchel and Graham in 2016, Hans Asperger, the founding researcher of autism, did not report using any females in his original research in 1944. But the original research is not the only place that excludes female patients. According to DeMello and others in 2022, even in recent years, studies of autism consistently enroll small number of female subjects or exclude them altogether. This exclusion leads to the rate of women going undiagnosed into adulthood because their characteristics and traits aren't in line with the current research. This leads directly to our second cause: differences in presenting. One major difference in presenting in young girls is masking. Masking, as defined by frontier psychology, is when an autistic person disguises parts of themselves to better fit in with those around them. This could mean laughing when others do, or mimicking facial expressions, even when you don't understand the conversation. According to the National Institute of Health in 2022, the only major difference is that women just tend to be better at masking than men. They start masking at earlier ages because they have a stronger drive to fit in with their peers. In the DSM-5 by the CDC, it is stated that a person must present persistent deficits in different categories to even possibly have autism. But when a young girl is masking, it makes it that much easier for doctors to miss those same deficits. Experiences like Emmy's grown up had led to two main effects: autistic burnout and improper diagnosis. First, autistic burnout. Manzella and others define autistic burnout as a physical, mental, and emotional fatigue. Many would describe it as similar to feeling like you're in a deep depression, making functioning difficult. The result of not being diagnosed earlier in life, they are unable to get the help that they need, leading to that depressive-like burnout. This lack of research and inaccurate evaluation criteria leads to our second effect: improper diagnosis. According to The Conversation in 2022, nearly 80% of women with autism are diagnosed with eating disorders, borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, or anxiety before finally getting the proper diagnosis of autism. These improper diagnoses lead to a diagnosis cycle, only making that first effect of autistic burnout even worse, as young girls are led through improper prescriptions and diagnosis, but still left with no real answers. Both of those effects were things that Emmy dealt with, a universal experience for girls and women with autism. But it doesn't have to be that way. It was probably obvious, but that little girl was me. I was diagnosed with autism at 18 years old, and it has given me an entirely new perspective on life. I've been able to understand myself in a way that I wasn't able to before. By understanding these causes and effects to this lack of diagnosis of autism in girls, we are then able to help them better. Just because research has ignored this group of women doesn't mean that we don't have to. It is clear that there is a need for action. But what solutions can we employ? I am proposing a person-to-person advocacy and support-based policy. First, starting with autistic burnout, by being aware of what it is and what it can look like. If you are autistic, this is for you. On the screen, I included a list of tips and tricks to help manage autistic burnout. And if you are not autistic, share these resources with someone you know who is. Start a dialogue with them. It can be something as simple as asking their preferences for eye contact or how to best help them when they're overstimulated. Dialogues like these are the key to begin advocating and accommodating to help reduce burnout. To combat this lack of research, we have to get involved in research. On the screen, I included a QR code to an organization called Spark for Autism. They are an organization that does virtual research for autism, and they are specifically seeking for women to be involved. I encourage you, connect your autistic sisters with them and with their local universities. I personally have participated in 2 autism research studies right here at Liberty University. And if you are a researcher, I included a list of topics that you could pursue further in your next study. By connecting women's voices to this research is the key to what is going to change the DSM-5 in the coming years to better include the traits and characteristics of women. When dealing with this issue of misdiagnosis, we have to educate ourselves and our doctors. To do this, I included 3 resources that you can go to better educate yourself, and 2 more to better educate your doctor. By doing this, we and our doctors can become the ally and advocate that someone may need in the medical room. But if you are a woman or know a woman who may be a part of that 80% with the wrong diagnosis, I included a list of diagnoses to look out for. I encourage you, reach out to your doctor and begin asking about autism. Finally, the best thing that we can do is to equip ourselves with others' narratives. So as we begin on this difficult journey, we can learn from their experiences. To do this, I included a list of autistic influencers who share about their story and experiences. That's how I discovered the parallels within my own life and how I learned to advocate for myself going to my very first evaluation. I'm now open for questions.
Why not a nationwide policy for more autism research with girls or a complete curriculum in the schools?
Having a nationwide policy or a school curriculum would be amazing, but frankly, right now, I don't think it's realistic. I wanted to provide something that every single person in this room can do. 1 in 36 individuals is autistic, so statistically speaking, there's 1 or 2 here right now. When you leave, there are pamphlets by the door that you will be able to take that has all of the research that I talked about. I encourage you, take one, use it, spread this awareness so that hopefully one day in the future, there can be a nationwide or school policy. We've looked at the facts. Now let's look at the emotions. For 34 years, I didn't know that I was autistic. I just knew me. Me who had written to Santa asking for a friend for Christmas without much of a result. Me who became a college cheerleader and sorority social chair because those were the markers of social competence. Who even with a 4.0 at Brown University still felt like I was nothing more than a beautiful facade. For 34 years, I didn't know that I was autistic, but I always knew that I was different. I always had that frantic need to find my footing. I tried to fit in. I researched teenagers, which was interesting because I was close to becoming one. I read about teenage driving, teenage runaways, and teenage dropout rates, and boy, was it a shocker. But none of the research provided much enlightenment on my real area of interest, teenage friendships. Autism is a lived experience, so to understand it, you have to live it. Taking from Autism in Heels by Jennifer Cook O'Toole and Counting by Sevens by Holly Goldberg Sloan. Let's live it. This lawyer's daughter knew that in order to go into a psychologist or a psychiatrist's office and articulately lay out a theory, she needed a precedent. So where were the girls? Where were the women? Where could I find an equally bright but happens to love lipstick and heels version of Asperger's? Someone to check myself against and then perhaps point to and say, recognize anyone? The trouble was that no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't find her. I couldn't find a me. I was looking to hold a candle to myself only to be met with long darkness. No one who embodied my way of moving through the world with my precise a slant rhythm. I figured out what I'm going to wear on my first day at Sequoia. My father asked, "And what will that be?" I was pleased. I will be wearing my gardening outfit. Dad and Mrs. J, "Are you sure about that?" Mom, who up until this point was unloading the dishwasher, turned around. I could see her face. She looked pained. They didn't get it. The first day at middle school was a chance to make a new introduction. I needed to convey to the group a basic sense of my identity while keeping a few of the basic elements of my character under wraps. I couldn't stop myself from explaining. "I'm making a statement about my commitment to the natural world." I saw them exchange quick looks. "Of course, you're so right." I looked down into my breakfast bowl and began counting the flax seeds, multiplying them by sevens. 7, 14, 21, 28, 35. It's an escape technique. Dr. Asperger's patients apparently love train timetables, maps of their routes too. I had it instantly, intuitively, the beauty of order, the reliability of fact. People are changeable. Facts, though, are sturdy, a display of pleasure without anxiety. That was the real reason for the beloved train schedules and map making. It was also the reason why, as a child, I collected scores of British Royals postcards into big black photo albums and arranged them into a millennium's worth of family trees. It was the same reason why I chose to write my honors thesis on Barbie and the particulars of 20th century women's fashion. In the highest brow of academic ways, I had achieved that same needed girl makeover. Besides number 7, I have 2 other major obsessions: medical conditions and plants. By medical conditions, I mean human disease. I study myself, of course, but my illnesses so far have been minor and not life-threatening. The only reason that I regularly leave the house is to go to the forced prison camp, also known as school, and my weekly trip to the Central Library is to observe sickness in the general population. I visit the local shopping mall, which fortunately has its share of disease. Since I was little, I've kept field notes and made diagnostic flashcards. My second interest, plants. They are living, growing, reproducing, pushing, pulling all around us at all times, and we accept that without even noticing. Open your eyes, people. That is amazing. We think that they don't have eyes, but they see the angle of the sun and the rise of the moon. They don't just feel the wind. They change directions because of it. I was taken to see an educational consultant, and the woman did an evaluation. She sent my parents a letter. I read it. It said that I was highly gifted. According to the consultant, the challenge for the parents of someone who is highly gifted was to find ways to keep the child engaged and stimulated. But I think that she was wrong. Almost everything interests me. The challenge for parents of a person like me is to find someone who could put up with such a person. All of that leads to our garden. Mom and Dad said that they were looking to enrich my life, but I think that one thing was obvious from the beginning. Plants can't talk back. I barely made it here today, I admitted to my therapist. You see, I thought it was me, but I'm not it, the link, I mean. Her forehead crinkled. To their autism, Jennifer? You thought you might be the connection to your children's diagnosis? I nodded. Okay, then tell me, she pressed. I opened my secret blue notebook and words began pouring out of me, began explaining all that had held months of research, unspoken personal details, and disconnected stories. Tears spilt until my eyes fell away from the psychologist. I didn't really need to reference the pages anyway. This is my life story I was telling. I knew it by heartache. And then there was silence. Jennifer, why does it matter to you, the diagnosis? Suddenly, the room was back, or maybe I was back in the room. My body shook and my eyes burned. Because, I replied. It would mean that I'm not a total failure at being human. She smiled gently. Jennifer, you're not a failure. And yes, I'm fairly certain you do have autism.